Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to take our very first look at the Battlefield 6 beta. Instead of looking at another 4090, another 9800 X3D, I figured that it'd be more interesting if we focused on the lowest recommended system requirements, which if we look at the page, they list a Ryzen 3700X, which I do have and we're going to use. And for a GPU, they list a 6700 XT and an RTX 3060 Ti. Now, unfortunately, I don't have either of those GPUs, but I do have an RTX 5060, which is supposed to be around 10% or so faster than a 3060 Ti, but it should work well enough, and you're going to get to see in this video that it actually does. We'll look at 1080p, 1440p, and 4K as well. So, let's jump straight into it. Starting off with 1080p, which in my opinion is what the RTX 5060 was made for, DLAA, and maximum graphical settings. Don't worry, we're going to check lower graphical settings as well. For this benchmark, we're going to focus on Conquest mode. That's the large-scale 64-player battle, and I'm not much of a competitive player. I don't really play Battlefield, but hey, I'm not here to show off my skills. We're here to look at the hardware, and we actually have a very good looking game. Straight away, we can tell that we are largely CPU bound. If we look at our GPU usage, it's not at 99%. Sometimes it is, but most of the times it isn't. It is dropping below 90s. So that tells us that we are CPU bound. So that is why I like to start with all graphical settings maxed out, and in this case, why wouldn't you? It's not like lowering the settings is going to give you any more frames. So I'm actually quite surprised that the 3700X is doing as well as it is, because normally the lowest recommended hardware doesn't usually perform great, but that's more with AAA games. For competitive games, I'd say this is a pretty good CPU. It handles relatively well, even when there's quite a lot going on. You are getting around 80 to 90 FPS or so. Now, I played with these settings for a little bit, and I did see some drops into the 70s and mid-60s in more hairy situations, but it was for the most part okay. Except for in this area, we did see some pretty significant drops in FPS. Felt a bit of an outlier, as you're going to see for the rest of the video, but for some reason, we did see drops into the low 50s here for a brief moment, and I'm not sure if it's the GPU. I mean, the GPU appears to be maxed out 99%. I'm assuming that it's probably the GPU, probably because there's a lot of foliage and trees, and of course, the higher graphical fidelity could be causing an issue here perhaps, but it's really hard to say because while a GPU's at 99%, it's not consuming 120 watts. So just to rule out the GPU, I just went ahead and went from DLAA to DLSS quality, still maintaining the maxed out graphical settings because, hey, why not? It appears we have the GPU power to handle it. Now, I'm going to enter this heavy forested area again just to see how we do now that we have DLSS quality enabled, and we appear to be doing much better. We do drop into the high 50s for a brief second there, but then it goes right back up. So I suspect that what we experienced earlier was a GPU bottleneck, or maybe a combination of two. Now, I did play the map for a little while with these settings, and it appeared to be ran really well. And also, since we are using DLSS quality now, we appear to be more CPU bound more frequently, although GPU use does go back up into the high 90s periodically. So maybe there's still more performance we can squeeze out of the 3700X if we were to lower our graphical settings some, or maybe use more aggressive DLSS. I say we try to lower the graphical settings down some because it's a competitive game and I'm sure people are going to want to see that. So I'm all for giving people what they want, within reason. Alright, so what we're going to do here is we're going to stay at 1080p, we're going to go back to DLAA, and we're going to go into the graphical settings and lower every setting down by 1, except for texture resolution, which is only low or high. We're going to keep that on high because 8 gigs of VRAM should be perfectly fine, so that's what we're doing. And let's see what happens. Now, after changing all those settings, the game did require a restart, which I did do, but unfortunately this appears to be a different map. It's still Conquest, but it appears to be a bit more urban of an area, a bit more congested, a lot more going on. But what happened is actually quite interesting, because just by lowering the graphical settings down a notch, we're actually got a lot more performance, which you might say, well, we were already getting around 80 or so FPS previously. Now we're getting 100. That is a pretty big jump, but that's not all, because our GPU use now is consistently below 90%. That means that if our CPU was faster, we'd be able to get a lot more out of our GPU. But I'm not going to complain, because I think the 3700X is actually doing really well here. We're getting close to 100 FPS. I mean, I played the map with these settings for quite a while. It was around 10 minutes or so, and we averaged 95 FPS. I wouldn't pay much attention to the 1% lows, because the 1% lows are being affected by some hitches that happen every time you die, and I die a lot. Every time the map pops up, there is a hitch, so that does impact the 1% lows. So you can't really go by that. It's not accurate. As you can see, look at the frame time. The game is running extremely smooth. I think the 3700X is doing a really good job here. I mean, again, I'm not a big competitive player, but for me, 100 FPS feels great. I mean, the game feels very smooth. It still looks really good with these settings. Again, there's really no point in checking DLSS, because we're already CPU bound consistently. It wouldn't make much of a difference, except for maybe lower our GPU power consumption. But yeah, really good results here at 1080p with this hardware. No problem at all. At least I think so. On to 1440p now. We're going to leave the graphical settings as they were, so not ultra, but a notch down with high texture quality still. And we're going to go back to DLAA, because it appeared that we had some GPU performance to spare. Why not? Now, the map appears to be the same one, which is good, because we already know how the 3700X does in here. We were able to average 95 by the end of our 10-minute run or so. This time around, we're not getting that. So I think it's safe to assume that we are GPU bound. And what's interesting is that it doesn't show a 99% consistently. So different games will react a bit differently. Don't always expect GPU to say 99% to be 100% sure that you're GPU bound. Sometimes it might say 97, sometimes it might say 95. As you can see in this case, we know that the 3700X was able to do over 100 FPS in this map, unless the resolution is also affecting CPU performance, which that can happen sometimes. Now, we don't know that for sure, but that could be possible. Regardless though, I still think the frame rate that we're currently getting with DLAA is really good. The game looks extremely crisp, extremely clean. It's very fluid. In my opinion, it's great. Averaging 84 FPS is nothing to scoff at. It's pretty good. Now, the game does support frame generation and multi-frame generation as well, so since we have an RTX 5060, let's check it out. Frame generation times 2. Are we doubling our frame rate? Well, not quite, but I guess it's relatively close. We're getting around 130 FPS or so. Hey, the game still feels pretty good to play. We are losing a bit of responsiveness, of course, to get a smoother gameplay experience, essentially. Is it worth it? Well, I don't know. To me, it looks more fluid. Personally, I probably wouldn't use it. I would probably try, maybe I would use DLSS quality or something like that to try to get that 100 FPS or so. But still, this feels pretty good to me. Feels fine. I'm using a mouse and keyboard, and the game looks very fluid as well. And it's good that frame generation works, because first time I tried it, it's not in the video, but it didn't work for me. I turned it on and it didn't work for me. That's why I never bothered to use it at 1080p. I figured I'd give it another go, and hey, it not works. So multi-frame generation does work at times 2. Anyway, let's try times 4. We're back in the menu now. We still have DLAA enabled and multi-frame generation times 4 at 1440p, and it doesn't really quadruple our frame rate, but we're getting over 170 FPS. To be honest, it looks good. it looks very fluid. It does look like 170 FPS. I don't see any garbling or any artifacting or any flaws that you'd normally associate with frame generation. The UI looks clean. All that looks fine. The game still feels responsive enough. Again, I probably wouldn't use it. I would probably just play it without frame generation, but hey, to each their own. It does work, which is nice. So again, I did keep playing the map for about 8 to 10 minutes or so, and it was fine. We did actually get pretty close to 200 FPS or so with multi-frame generation at 1440p with the high settings. And yeah, it ran fine. Very consistent, very fluid. It's been good. I think this hardware could handle 1440p no problem with some tweaks. We're now going to give 4K a go, and as a precaution, I'm going to go and leave the graphical settings the same except for textures. We're going to set that to low because I feel 8 gigabytes of VRAM may not be up to it. So textures on low, DLSS balance. And you know what, guys? It actually did surprisingly well. We were able to average around 70 FPS or so at 4K. Yeah, it's DLSS balance, but the image is still being reconstructed to 4K. And playing this on a 4K OLED display, it looks fantastic. Now, we did lose some frame rate. The game has become a lot more demanding. Going from 1440p to 4K is quite the jump. Previously at 1440p with DLAA, by the way, we were able to average around 85 FPS in this same very map, and now we've dropped into the 70s. Now, to me, the game still feels very fluid, feels fine to play, but I know competitive players usually try to squeeze every little bit that they can. But this hardware is not really 4K hardware. The fact that it can even do it at all is actually quite surprising. But that is with DLSS balance. What about, let's try DLSS performance. So we're gonna drop from DLSS balance to DLSS performance, still at 4K, and it actually still ran really well, but not really all that much better than DLSS balance. We did end up averaging around 72 FPS with DLSS balance, and I played the map for around 8 to 10 minutes with DLSS performance. By the end, we ended up averaging around 74 FPS. So it wasn't really that big of a gain in performance. The game still looks really good. I mean, the new DLSS 4 transformer model is really, really good. I struggle to find any differences between DLSS quality, DLSS balance, or DLSS performance. I think at 4K, DLSS performance is perfectly viable, and to me, the game still looks really, really good. Personally, I would probably stick with 1440p with DLSS quality or something. That way, you'll be able to get close to 100 FPS, which is a pretty big jump going from 75 to 100. But the fact the hardware can do it at all, I mean, again, it's quite surprising. Now, we may as well give frame generation a go since we're here anyway. So multi-frame generation times 2, that takes us from around 75 FPS or so to around 120. So not exactly doubling of our FPS, but the game does look more fluid. However, we have lost some responsiveness because half of these frames are now generated, and it's less than we were getting before. So again, it's a trade-off that may not be worth it for a game like this, so I can totally understand that, but for the sake of testing it, this is what multi-frame generation times 2 provides. And if we were to try multi-frame generation times 4, it takes us close to around 145 FPS or so, but if I'm being honest, it doesn't feel particularly great. It's okay, but you know, this hard, we're using the lowest recommended hardware, right? And the fact that we're even able to do 4K and stay above 60 with any settings is quite cool and interesting. So yeah, guys, that's Battlefield 6 beta on the lowest recommended hardware, which in my opinion runs extremely well. As a matter of fact, as far as this game goes, 3700X with a 5060, it's actually not a bad pairing at all. Now, if we did have a faster CPU, we would be able to take advantage of it, of course, but the fact that you're able to get around 100 FPS at 1080p and 1440p with some more aggressive graphical settings, I think that's pretty cool. I think the game is pretty well optimized. I mean, it looks really good. It's not Unreal Engine 5 good, but at the same time, it doesn't run like an Unreal Engine 5 game at all. It runs extremely smoothly. So, yeah. Now, as a minimum CPU, they do recommend a Ryzen 2600. I do have a Ryzen 2600, and depending on how this video does, maybe we can check it out when the game finally launches. I would be curious to see, but I suspect the Ryzen 2600 may not be able to maintain 60 FPS. But you never know. The fact that the 3700X can go up to 90 or so, you never know. Maybe EA looks like they put in quite a bit of effort in this game, and you know, it shows. Even for a beta, the game runs really well. As you saw, the frame time, there were no stutters or anything like that. There was a very random hitch every now and then, sometimes, very rarely. The only hitches that I saw was after you die when the map comes up, and then when you actually load into the map, there is a little hitch, to be expected. But during gameplay, the game ran really smooth. And let's face it, a 3700X, not a ton of people are using this type of CPU. It's a bit old, but I suspect many are using a similar type of CPU as well, because, for example, Ryzen 3600 sold really, really well. It was a very popular CPU. It was very easy to get. It was cheap. So I suspect a lot of people still have those CPUs, and hey, I think they'll get a very smooth gameplay experience, in my opinion, as long as they have a halfway decent GPU. But what do you guys think? Leave a comment down below. Personally, I found it a bit surprising that we can even do 4K. Even before multi-frame generation, we were able to get at least 60 FPS, which I think is pretty cool. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching. I do appreciate it. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Give the video a like and subscribe for more content. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.